Aloha Aina, Ano Ai, Velina Kako. Welcome to Free Hawaii News, brought to you by the Koani Foundation, presenting Hawaiian perspectives on a broad range of topics and issues affecting the Hawaiian Islands, the Pacific, and the world. Your hosts for Free Hawaii News are Leon Kaulahau-Siu, musician, composer, diplomat, and political analyst, and Hinaleimoana Wong, Kumu filmmaker, cultural and Hawaiian language preservationist, and community leader. And now, Free Hawaii News.
Aloha nui mai a kākoa pauloa e ko Hawaii nei pai aina puni. Mahalo anui ko kākou hui ana o wau no keia o Kumuhina.
Aloha no, my name is Leon Kaulahau-Siu, and we welcome you to this episode of Free Hawaii News. In the months and now years following the August 2023 Lahaina wildfires, one question remained top of mind for Lahaina residents. Who has been purchasing aina, or land, offered for sale in Lahaina in the aftermath of the fires? Initially, the question was not easy to answer, but now, with nearly 3 years of transactional data emerging, the answer is becoming clearer. Records show that in addition to individuals and companies, Maui County and the Lahaina Community Land Trust are now listed as buyers in public records. But how does this square with residents' commitment to have Lahaina land stay in Lahaina hands? To find out, we go now to Lahaina, where Autumn Ness and Mikey Burke are standing by. Autumn Ness is the executive director of the Lahaina Community Land Trust, and Mikey Burke is its board president. Aloha, Autumn. Aloha, Mikey.
Aloha, Leon. Thank you for having us again.
Hi, Leon. Mahalo. Good to see you.
You've been keeping track of who is purchasing aina, or land, offered for sale in Lahaina in the aftermath of the 2023 fires. Can you tell us about what you found out?
Thanks for asking this question, because I'm pretty sure that we might be the only organization that's tracking in this kind of detail. Normally people track like land transactions, how many were sold, what they were sold for, that kind of stuff. But we kind of dig down deeper a little bit into who bought it, like we can't tell a lot, but we can tell, for example, what the address where the tax bill of the new owner of the parcel goes. And that tells you a lot. Is the new owner getting their tax bill in Lahaina? Are they getting their tax bill on Maui? Are they getting their tax bill
in Hawaii?
On the continent? And then you can do a little internet sleuthing, And so the data we have, this is a little bit outdated because the last time we did a data roundup was the end of 2025. And at that time, there had been 66 legitimate parcel sales in Lahaina. Of those, 12 were companies, like an LLC, and only 3 of those 12 had a Lahaina tax address. 8 were the county of Maui. That's great. 33, so half of those were individuals. 21 of those 33 had a Lahaina tax address, which is awesome. And 13 of those at the time were Lahaina Community Land Trust. So at the time that we did this data roundup, Lahaina Community Land Trust was 20% of the transactions that were recorded at the time.
What conclusions can we assume from the statistics you've just shared with us?
One of the conclusions is that what we're doing is working.
And we weren't crazy.
And
we said that we were going to protect 20% of all the land up for sale in Lahaina.
Yeah.
Which we thought we were crazy at the time.
Yeah, it did sound a little crazy.
Statistic out there. I don't know about this.
Yeah, so we're getting there. It also makes me glad that the community, not just us, but the community at large, organized the way that it did in the very beginning with like Lahaina's not for sale, that kind of stuff. I think part of the reason that the off-island and corporate buyers are still low compared to other post-disaster communities are that a lot of folks, before they listed their parcel publicly, like on the MLS, reached out to us directly. I just did a count yesterday, and almost half of the parcels that we ended up purchasing were purchased directly from the seller. There was no agent involved. It didn't go up on the MLS. So yeah, the conclusions I'm drawing right now is that the community is behind this. And what we're doing is working.
It sounds like over 50% were sold to buyers with addresses in Lahaina, correct?
That's correct. And that makes us really happy that I was worried, really worried for a while because of the prices of the lots that I was wondering if any Lahaina families would be able to afford those, but Coconut Wireless tells us that people are like pooling their insurance money and doing what they got to do.
The Lahaina Community Land Trust has now secured 20% of the transactions, which means that those parcels of land will be protected forever. Yes?
That's the whole thing. And when we say protected, I almost don't think that goes far enough. Like when we protect a piece of land, we are actually, what that means is we are buying it out of this crazy American capitalistic system that we decided that land belongs in. Not we. Somebody decided, right? So when we protect a piece of land, we buy it out of that system. We liberate it out of that system and put it into something better, something that the community has decided they want to see, you know? So that land is no longer like a profit creating instrument for one person. It's now a community asset, you know? And the community has decided what that community asset means is a home that's gonna not be
Subject to the market.
thank you. It's gonna be protected for a longtime Lahaina resident. We always know how much this house is going to cost if it ever sells. There's no surprises. Yeah.
It gives stability to whoever ends up living in that home and becomes, you know, a Lahaina Community Land Trust homeowner. It gives them peace of mind knowing that they don't have to go out and work 2 or 3 or 4 jobs just to be able to pay the mortgage, right? Because we take the land value out of the equation. And so, you know, somebody who could never walk into a bank and get a $1 million mortgage can now walk into the bank and get a $300,000 mortgage or a $500,000 mortgage and be able to own a home on a Lahaina Community Land Trust piece of Aina. And for me, whenever we close a transaction, it starts when we enter a transaction, I see the family that's going to be in that home. And when I say that, it's not going to be the actual family at the end because we are doing this in a lottery system. But to me, it's confirmation that there is somebody out there, there are ohana out there that are going to be in this home, that have a right to be in a home, and that I know can afford to be in a home like this.
Tell us about Aina that was sold to buyers with addresses outside of Hawaii.
That's the hard part about what we're doing. We don't have visibility into who's purchasing these parcels until the transactions are confirmed in a public system, right? Like the county's property tax system. And then we can go in and see who they are. We can note what their address is, and then we can do some sleuthing, like Autumn said, on the internet, and try to see if they're families that are coming home, families who have ties to Hawaii at all, families who have ties to Lahaina, but that's not always the case. Or maybe there isn't a presence on the internet that we can connect them to, so that we just have to hope and pray that the folks that are picking up these parcels with addresses outside of Hawaii are the right kind of people that we want to be inviting back into our home.
Yeah. And sometimes if it's an LLC, it's really hard to tell. Like there are a lot of transactions that are some kind of an LLC. You can't tell anything about them. Sometimes they're new and their tax address is a different state or whatever. And so it's a bit of a wait and see game. Yeah. There was one transaction where an offshore LLC came in, bought a property for 2 million.
Maybe.
Yeah, and then had some big plans for it and understood very quickly that the plans that this person had for this parcel were not going to be received well in the community. And so they turned around and listed it like less than 6 months after they bought it for like double what they bought it for. And so, yeah, there are people out there that do that, and we're trying our best to keep them out.
Do you think some of those buyers might be Kama'aina returning home?
We really hope so. We really hope that wherever our families ended up, even if it's a generation or two disconnected from Lahaina, I hope that they are looking at this opportunity to come home.
Yeah.
It's not, when we started out, the idea was to keep Lahaina home, keep Lahaina lands in Lahaina hands. And if that means that you were in Las Vegas waiting it out and now is the time that you can come home, then please come home.
What is it going to take to protect Aina for Lahaina families for generations to come?
We've built this engine, and it is going. And all we need is more gas. And really, that's money. I am so proud of the intelligence and the support in this community that's built this engine. The county and some of our really close friend funders have just really done great by saying, you guys got this. You know your community. The community knows what it's want. We can't do what you guys are doing. We can't move as fast as you can, so we're just going to fund you. And that has been incredibly powerful.
Mahalo nui to Autumn and Mikey. Mahalo for joining us.
You're watching Free Hawaii News, giving you the Kanaka perspective on issues in Hawaii.
We come now to one of our favorite segments, and this is where both Leon and I get to talk about things that are really meaningful to us. And for this episode's Pacific Way, we recall to everyone about the word aloha. You've all heard us mention the word aloha throughout our broadcasts, and we are very familiar with how aloha pans out when it's good and when everything is well. Today, Leon, we recall the floods of last month, and these floods were devastating. They dealt blows around the islands, not just one, but several of our major islands were greatly hit. And we see how communities have responded. Leon, one of the things that I remarked the most about looking back at last month and how our people, our island peoples, dealt with the devastation and the destruction after the floods, I cannot help but think of the word aloha. And especially in the areas of Laie, Kahuku, Hauula, on the Ko'olauloa side of Oahu, I know that I watched as the news would unfold of families helping one another and being there, even though many of them, their houses were underwater and at least one floor was underwater. But did you see any of the coverage that came about on mainstream media about people dealing with the flood? Because I clearly recall seeing the faces. You saw our Pacific Island people still smiling, and they didn't have the sense of mental and emotional and spiritual despair. What are your reflections from the flood last month, Leon?
Yes, it was an inspiring time because our people, like you said, are not just resilient, but are uplifting at the same time. We're not just survivors, but we're there to uplift one another. And I think we saw this time and time again, particularly in the last month's floods. I was so encouraged because here were people, neighbors, who themselves were suffering damage, but they were helping their other neighbors that needed help. And so I think it's really indicative of the Pacific Way, because you see this happening all over the Pacific. When the Lahaina fires happened, for instance, immediately local people, Hawaiians, mobilized, and they were the first on the scene. When you talk about first responders, the emergency people were there, but the ones that brought food and comfort and encouragement were the local people. They showed up in boats. They took boats across the Lahaina. So that we're seeing the same thing here, where people. I saw that heavy equipment owners from Wahiawa took them down to Wailua so they could rescue people. So they could drive through the flood and pick up people and rescue them. So they came from miles away with their heavy equipment just to Kokua, and they were way before any official first responders.
Yeah.
It was neighbors helping neighbors.
Yes. And Leon, I can't also help but notice that during that entire time, I didn't hear one mention from the American side of things, from the US federal government, given that Hawaii is still considered a state. It's the 50th state of the Union. And I would have anticipated that with the level of destruction and the level of damage that was sustained by so many islands, that there would be some sort of declaration of some sort. And of course, the federal response through FEMA would have been invoked. However, in watching the entire time, I didn't hear anything about it. And so it's rather bittersweet when I reflect upon this, because on one hand, this demonstrates that our island people and our resilience goes way far beyond money. It goes way far beyond anything that the United States of America really can and is able to offer. And that is the intrinsic level of hope, which comes from that indomitable spirit of our people, which is founded upon the understanding of aloha. When we have aloha for one another, aloha ke kahi, kokua aku, kokua mai, lau lima. That means that it's not just love, hello, goodbye. Aloha is care and consideration. And aloha means that no matter our differences, no matter the things that keep us separate and distinct, aloha brings us together in commonality. And in times of crises and in times of great emergency, aloha prevails. And we truly saw that from all of the communities. So for each and every one of the folks who gave of themselves, gave of their resources, gave of their time, we cannot express any greater admiration and profound respect for all of you whom have served our own community. And kokuaku kokua mai means to help one another. Laulima means to put many hands together to make light, small work. What would have been great is reduced to but a little bit of effort.
What this does for me is it gives me encouragement, because we do have some pretty tough times ahead for us as we restore our nation, and have to rebuild and recalibrate who we are and all that. The good thing is that foundationally, our people have this spirit of aloha. So it's not like we're going to be mistreating our friends and our neighbors just because they're not because they're Americans or whatever. I think what's going to come through is the spirit of aloha as we transition our nation. This is where the basis comes in. I'm not worried at all with how we're going to handle this, because we have this spirit of aloha. In a time of crisis, we respond and we shine with this aloha. And in the time of transition, that's going to be another type of crisis, not as much as this, but it will be some time where we can again, that spirit of aloha will come through and it'll get us through that transition. So I was very encouraged and I continue to be amazed by our people.
In the years since the illegal overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom government in 1893, the United States has attempted to make up to Hawaiians by offering various U.S.-created programs and settlements for the loss of our native lands, the Hawaiian Kingdom sovereign government, and the deposing of Queen Liliuokalani. Two very controversial programs the U.S. created and implemented in Hawaii are the Hawaiian Homestead Commission Act of 1920 and also the blood quantum requirements imposed by the U.S. Congress in 1921. Originally designed as a land trust for Hawaiians, both the Hawaiian Homestead Commission Act and the blood quantum requirements were quickly seen by Hawaiians as a means of control, containment, and ultimately displacing us over time. The Hawaiian diaspora of today, where more Hawaiians now live outside of Hawaii than in it, is a prime example of the planned disenfranchisement of our people, our Kanaka. To tell us more on this, we go now to Adam Keawe Manalo Camp. Raised in the homestead community of Papakolea, Adam is a writer, poet, researcher, and Alohaina patriot with a strong focus on Hawaiian histories and cultural preservation. He holds a degree in anthropology, and his work centers on indigenous epistemologies, historic preservation, and the revitalization of Hawaiian narratives. He examines the intersections of identity, colonialism, and cultural continuity through his research and creative writing. Aloha mai ka'awa, Adam.
Aloha Kumuhina. It's great to be with you.
Before the illegal overthrow in 1893, Hawaiians had a total of over 4 million acres, which is the total land mass in Hawaii. But the 1920 Homes Commission Act, or Hawaiian Homes Commission Act, reduced the overall number of acres of land that are available to our people to only 200,000 acres, correct?
Kapai Aina Hawaii, the Hawaiian archipelago, comprises roughly around 4.1 million acres. In the mid-19th century, the Hawaiian Kingdom undertook the Great Mahele of 1848, which was a reorganization of land tenure that divided lands among the Crown, the government, and the Land Commission Awards for the Li'i and later the common people. This restructuring did not dissolve Hawaiian control over land, but reorganized it within a sovereign Hawaiian political system that was worried about a foreign takeover. You have to remember that just 5 years earlier, the British had occupied the Hawaiian Kingdom. So the Great Mahele was a way to try to make Hawaiian land tenureship readable to foreign powers. So the crown lands remained tied to the office of the mo'i, or king, and helped to support the institution of the monarchy, not through taxes, but through land tenureship. Government land supported the functions of the government of the Hawaiian Kingdom. And through the Kuleana Act of 1850, Maka'ainana, native tenants, or the common people, were also able to claim parcels, land parcels, formalizing their rights to the land that they cultivated. The resulting system was very layered and complex, but it remained Hawaiian in governance and authority. Under Kamehameha V, the crown lands were made into a trust, meaning that not even the crown could sell the crown lands. That system, however, was disrupted after the illegal overthrow of 1893. The provisional government and later the Republic of Hawaii seized the crown and government lands, and through the purported annexation of Hawaii to the United States in 1898, the Republic transferred roughly 1.8 million acres of these seized or stolen lands to the United States. This transfer removed a substantial portion of the Hawaiian national land base from Hawaiian political control. These seized lands are what are now called the so-called ceded or public land trusts today. When the US Congress enacted the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act in 1921, it did not restore the land base, even though it was understood that the primary beneficiaries of the ceded or stolen lands should be the Hawaiian people.
The US Congress decided that for Hawaiians to qualify to receive a small portion of this land to live on, that we had to have over 50% Hawaiian blood, right?
The Hawaiian Homes Commission Act, or HHCA, defines eligibility for an initial homestead lease as requiring at least 50% Hawaiian blood quantum. This requirement stands in contrast to our own indigenous frameworks of belonging, which historically centered mo'oku'auhau, or genealogy, kinship, and relationship to aina, to land. The 50% threshold emerged from the political conditions of the territorial period, mainly because of the lobbying efforts of the sugar plantation and financial oligarchy, known as the Big Five, as well as other major non-Hawaiian land interests. They supported a narrow definition of eligibility, thereby limiting the number of Native Hawaiians who could claim land under the Act. As enacted, the HHCA established a system in which land depended on a racialized legal definition created by the United States, imposed by the United States, narrowing the class of beneficiaries, at the same time narrowing the land base itself. This pattern was what the sugar oligarchy and other business interests had intended. This system was meant to erode Hawaiian land claims through blood quantums requirements while seemingly responding to Hawaiian land claims.
Let's go back to those 200,000 acres set aside for our people to live on. Given that a lot of those lands are actually upland, where there are no paved roads or electricity, no sewage or running water, how livable are these lands really for us?
Right. So the livability of Hawaiian homelands has long depended on the availability of infrastructure. Many parcels within the trust have required substantial investments in roads, water systems, wastewater infrastructure, drainage, and electrical services before they can support residential communities. Some lands also present environmental or geographical constraints that complicate development, such as they're on a rocky cliff in some cases, or there's no access to running water at all.
Currently, how many Hawaiians are on the wait list to get land, and how many Hawaiians have actually passed away while waiting on this list to obtain a piece of land?
As of 2024, approximately 29,000 applicants remain on the Department of Hawaiian Homeland's waitlist, representing tens of thousands of families waiting for lots for residential, agricultural, and pastoral purposes. Many applicants have waited for extended periods of time, often spanning decades. Some have died on these wait lists. My own mother died on the waiting list, and she was on that waiting list for over 40 years. 40 years.
The Hawaiian Homes Commission Act, as well as blood quantum requirements imposed by the United States, are actually programs of entrapment. Would you agree?
The Department of Hawaiian Homelands has operated for decades within conditions of chronic underfunding relative to its constitutional and federal mandates. Courts have already found that the state failed to meet its obligations in delivering homesteads in a timely manner. This is not a matter of opinion. This is a matter of court records. And these factors produce a system in which access to land is delayed, constrained, and largely unrealized.
It literally created the diaspora, or the need for Hawaiians to leave our own homeland in order to have land to live on. Yes?
Yes, that's true, especially within a broader historical context. The overthrow, the illegal overthrow, the seizure of crown and government lands, the expansion of plantation agriculture, militarization, and the rising cost of living all contributed to the displacements of Hawaiians from our homeland.
No laila, mahalo anui ia oe, ara mahalo anui ke hui ano kākou, a mahalo anui kao mau hana maikai. One of the least discussed and thought about aspects of Kanaka culture is death care. Just like birth care, Kanaka or Wivi have specific protocols and procedures for the care of our bodies when we pass from this earth. Our term in our language is ho'oleva, and this describes our responsibility, our kuleana, to properly and perpetually care for our deceased. Moloka'i native Aloha Aina champion Miki Ala Piskaya has been working directly with Ohana, with our families, to carry out and perpetuate traditional death practices since 1996. After years of involvement with Malama Iwi Kupuna, or the repatriation of our ancestral burials, she has provided a wide variety of death care for her own ohana and friends. Miki Ala has found herself bringing traditional Hawaiian practices into contemporary settings to facilitate more meaningful and authentic experiences for families and individuals by ensuring consistency of each individual's values from life into death, and also to safeguard the integrity of mana being replenished back into our kulaivi. To this end, her ho'oleva work provides the residents of our Hawaiian Islands with focus on access to resources that encourage environmental stewardship and increased Hawaiian cultural integration in death care. We go now to the island of Moloka'i, where Miki Ala is standing by. Aloha mai kāua e Miki Ala.
Aloha e kumuhina.
What are some of the Hawaiian traditional death practices that you include or incorporate into the work that you do?
That's a hard question to answer because history spans centuries and practice has evolved. And then you have each island here with their own individual practices. But in general, I'm going to say that there was a consideration of how body and spirit comes together, and when that animation departs and ceases, where the spirit goes on to and what happens to the body. In a person's lifetime, everything that they've said and done is an accumulation of mana and aloha.
Why is the proper cultural care of our iwi, or our bones, for our deceased so important to us?
The assumption is that we accumulate mana by extracting it from our environment. The pono thing is to put it back. And so if after the spirit vacates the body, and the flesh has gone away, what's left behind is the bones, our iwi. And that means that everything is concentrated down. And there's a time release capsule, if you can imagine that, of that mana being restored and released back into the aina, into the land. And there's a term we use, kulaivi. It is the plains that hold the iwi. It's also the term we use for homeland. And it's where your ancestors are buried. And that grounding, that tethering, that the bones that are in my body come from the bones that are in this land, it now gives me every sense of the word kuleana, a right, a responsibility, a privilege to make sure that the cycle of mana, generation, extraction, replenishment, it remains intact.
What role does Hawaiian traditional death practice play in the inseparable relationship between our aina, our land, and our people?
I think the main focus of the work that I'm doing today is to ensure and strengthen the relationship of Kanaka, of people, to aina, to land. And if
when I think about how many people are being cremated and their ashes are scattered, while that has become the affordable option or the convenient option, and it's a beautiful thought to be scattered in the ocean. That though takes away the privilege of the next generation to say, my tutu, my ancestors' bones are in this ground. That there's a shift. And that's not a judgment, that's just a report of what I'm seeing happening is when people now are realizing that they don't know where their family members exist anymore because they've literally been scattered to the tides. That is already adversely impacting the Hawaiian centering and really that deep connection to the land because we've just given it up.
How do these traditional death practices create a connection and a very real bond between those who are still of the living and those who have passed on?
Mana and aloha are the two, it's like the measurement of an economy of interactions between people. So aloha is what we have flowing out of us, and mana is influence. It's what we do with that aloha and how we interact with those around us. Our phone now has a lot of mana over us these days. And so anyways, when we as individuals don't know, we've not organized or planned how to move mana or aloha or what to do with it when someone passes, that becomes grief. Grief is a frustration. Grief can be a confusion and a weight of not knowing what someone expected of them, fulfilling some commitment. And it's all the burdens, maybe it's financial or like leadership in the family, the dynamic. There's just all kinds of things that the mana or the aloha in a space when that's not properly organized. And you'll see that when people have dictated and put that out or before their passing, you see a much smoother transition.
Iki Ala, might you please talk a little bit about what your sense of mana is and where in the body this resides? How does mana permeate what we do in our culture and why it's so important to safeguard the integrity of that mana, which is being interred when we return our iwi to our family kulaiwi?
Every time we interact with the environment and with one another, there's energy is conjured. Sometimes it's aloha, and that aloha is one of wanting to give and care for. It's outward flowing, and there's mana. And mana has been described in so many different ways. And I believe that all of the definitions can be true depending on the context of the conversation. But mana is, in this sense of the word, it is the influence that someone has over other people and in their environment. And that mana is also an accumulation of all the nutrients, the energetic and life force that has been extracted from the environment around them. And so we always tell people when they come to Molokai, if you eat something that was grown here and you drink our water and you breathe our air that our trees and our ocean crafted for you, you now are sponsored, you're powered by Molokai. And now you are, like, just by being here, you already are obligated to do something meaningful and valuable with that energy, that life force that you are now being powered by. And you can do good or you can do harm. You can create imbalance on Molokai, or you can build abundance with us.
Why is it so important for you to do this kuleana, this work? And what does it provide our Hawaiian community throughout Hawaii?
My dad, my grandma, my great-grandpa, they're all kahu ministers in Hawaiian Protestant Church. And they managed to hybridize traditional Hawaiian practices and their Christianity in a way that made so much sense, that it was very seamless. That I grew up not knowing that, not understanding maybe where the conflict between those cultures existed. Anyway, my grandma tasked my brother with going out into the world, get a law degree, go out into the world, and you bring home every single iwi kupuna that ever left Molokai, and you bring that back, because we are in a state of depletion, and that mana needs to return so that we can be resilient in this next era, or time period. And so that's what he did. My brother went and got a law degree and has devoted his entire life to repatriations, bringing not just Molokai's iwi kupuna home, but across all the islands. What I learned being alongside him in that process was the reverence and like NAGPRA and all of these laws that were protecting ancient burial sites. And I was like, what about us today? I am the ancestor of my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren. And what am I doing to afford even my own iwi and the iwi of people who are living today? That reverence that we have for the ancient burials, why is it not equal to what we're doing today? So while he focused on that aspect, I shifted to taking care of the people who are here, and already sort of trying to work to secure practices that are already shifting us in the way we consider it, so that we don't become that situation.
No leila, mahalo anui a oe e miki ala, mahalo anui ka o mau hana nui, ka o mau hana ko'i, ka o mau hana maikai. Mahalo, mahalo.
Still to come on Free Hawaii News. Progress for Hawaii at the United Nations.
On January 17, 1993, at the Onipa'a rally protesting the 100th anniversary of the overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom, Haunani K. Trask boldly declared, "We are not Americans. We are not Americans. We are not Americans. We are Hawaiians. We will die as Hawaiians. We will never be Americans." It was a shocking line in the sand challenge, a head-on confrontation of our stolen identity. Over the past 32 years, many have come to understand and embrace our true identity and the legacy it carries. Friends say that in the recent Disney film Lilo and Stitch, when the CIA agent tells Lilo that their main job is to protect Americans, Lilo's grandmother says, "But we're Americans too." My friend said that there was a noticeable groan from the audience. Some people booed. My friend said that one line ruined the whole film for them. Apparently, the Disney writers and local script consultants didn't get the memo and completely missed that crucial distinction. We are not Americans. The point is, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, and even 10 years ago, the average Hawaii moviegoer would have completely missed that glaring error. But today, Lilo, a bright young Hawaiian tira, would have known she is not an American and would have thanked the CIA agent for acknowledging that fact. Having been in the movement from the early 70s, I am amazed how far we've come. I've noticed that the term mainland, when referring to the United States, is being used less frequently. The McKinley statue and the name of the school are now regarded as offensive icons of the hewa, the wrongdoing, of the United States' presence in Hawaii. The overthrow, the annexation, and statehood are seen as illegal acts. Hawaii's relationship with the U.S. is now called a prolonged illegal occupation and an international criminal enterprise. Current problems like poverty, homelessness, land dispossession, overdevelopment, the diaspora, are seen as a result of the illegal occupation. Nation-to-nation federal tribal recognition is out. Full independence is in. What we see happening is not just a reclaiming of the true Hawaii identity, it is the decoupling from the fake American identity of dependency, oppression, and destruction. The direction for Hawaii is to decouple from the U.S. and make our own way into the future. From our standpoint, things are moving in a positive direction, but from an international perspective, we are still invisible. I remember when I was little, we used to have a hand gesture riddle that went, "Here is the church, here is the steeple, open the church, where are the people?" And then it went on to say, "Here is the church, here is the steeple, open the church, there are the people." There are the people. Well, it's like that with our nation, the Hawaiian Kingdom. Members of the international community are beginning to accept our story that yes, the Hawaiian Kingdom was a sovereign nation, the U.S. caused a regime change and falsely annexed our nation and has been illegally occupying our nation. And they even understand that the Hawaiian Kingdom is technically a sovereign nation in continuity. But what they are beginning to ask is, where are the people? Where are the people who identify themselves as subjects of the Hawaiian Kingdom, the body politic? Where are the Hawaiian nationals? Many countries are willing to help us, but they want to see evidence that there is a body of people who clearly identify themselves as Hawaiian nationals and that there is a credible desire for independence. It doesn't have to be a massive group, but it can't be just a handful either. Yes, large ku'e actions like we had at Mauna Kea, Red Hill, etc., are very helpful, but there are not indicators of movement for independence. During the mid-1990s, after the historic Onipa'a March at Iolani Palace and Haunani Trask's famous speech, and after Clinton's apology later that year, numerous sovereignty groups sprang up. Some are still here. After a few years, the movement matured and morphed into independence groups. Scholarly work and examinations of customary international law and studies of the foundational documents of our kingdom confirmed that despite the multiple fraudulent actions and cover-ups by the United States over the past 133 years, the Hawaiian Kingdom continues to exist. So yes, we still exist as a lawful entity, and we still exist because Hawaiian nationals stand on the protest set by Queen Liliuokalani and the signers of the Ku'e petition. But now we need to populate our nation. Over the past 130 plus years of occupation, every effort was made by the occupiers to change the identity of Hawaiian subjects to that of U.S. citizens. And that was accomplished by coercion, deceit, suppressing the Hawaiian language and culture, propagandizing generations of children, and imposing U.S. citizenship as the only possible nationality. Having succumbed to 100 plus years of unrelenting U.S. propaganda and indoctrination, claiming Hawaii is part of the United States and the people of Hawaii are U.S. citizens, most of Hawaii's people are not aware of their rightful national status, their nationality, as subjects of the Hawaiian Kingdom.
Welcome everyone to this part of the show that is called Kumuhina's Mana'o. And as that title says, it is my Mana'o. It's not necessarily anyone else's, but these are the ruminations, these are the musings, these are my intimate thoughts. And so the sentiments that I share with you in today's Kumuhina Mana'o comes not just overnight, not just yesterday, last week, last month, last year. This comes from years of looking at my own journey in life and also realizing what my role is in so many different things when it comes to my ability and my desire to be here in our homeland. I often lament when I hear the narrative that Hawaiians are priced out of paradise. I don't disagree that we're priced out, but I believe the nuances of getting into the weeds of this discussion require everyone to consider for a moment what we have been expected to take on. There are expectations of us that we would learn English, of which from my grandparents' time, and I'm going to be 54 this year, so my grandparents, all four of whom who raised me from when I was little, they were born between the years of 1900 and 1920. This means that just 7 years prior, or within that generation prior, in all of my great-grandparents' time, that was the time of political upheaval and just political strife, if you would. It was the time when Kanaka were forced to reckon with the realities of our political future. And so my grandparents' generation becomes that generation required to speak English. And they in turn espoused everything that would support continuing to not only learn English, but continuing to foster our attitudes, our mental, emotional, spiritual perspectives towards who we are as a people. And when this culture fades away with the passing of that generation, there's no further affirmation that can be that anchor. And so my parents' generation, my mother is almost 80 this year and my father is 94. And when I think of some of the hallmarks of their generation, they espoused the following things. They made sure that we, growing up, would be required to think of the continental U.S. We were forced to look at it as the mainland. And saying this comes so easily to so many. And as I've challenged many of you here when I'm speaking about Kumu Hinaleimoana, or sometimes even in our segue on the Pacific Way, our segment that is, we are forced to look at what are the ground rules for our lives. And when it's not operating from the context of aloha and from our language perspective, our native language speaking perspective, it puts a great strain upon us, because then we're ever attuned to English, we're attuned to all of the sources of things that influence our mind, our heart, and our spirit. In traditional times, multi-generational and multi-families living in one area or within one kauhale or one village type setting, it now is a thing of the past and they become fond memories. And so, yes, the cost of living is high, but of course it's high because we no longer have a safety net of checks and balances. For example, in my ni'ihau ohana, it's not uncommon for me to ask them or them to ask me, and we say, hina, ai ke olu olu lo ia e kaitala, o me te no kaitala me na uno hele ti te ano mea ai na e o I tope ia, ai na I tomo mai tau tala, te lo no ia o e kaitala olu, ai mei me na uno hele ti tau po me e pono nei hele na. The request could come in and say, oh, Hina, please, my money hasn't come in yet. I was wondering if you could allow me to use some money so that I can go get these things. And as soon as my money comes in, I'll give you back. It's absolutely not unheard of, but it's also a very easy thing because that's what we do to kokua one another, and vice versa. In my time of need, I do the same thing. Now, that's not to say that people don't do this today, but the value system of money, where it could be a large amount of money too, but money is a material thing, and there are elements of our life that are far more important than money and material items. And even when it comes to wanting something, I could say, oh, I like that shirt, and my family would give it to me, or they might tell me, oh, I love those earrings, I love that necklace on you. And then my culture says I need to open it up off of me and give it to them. These are all part and parcel of my random thoughts when I think about what does it really mean to me to be Hawaiian and to be a Pacific Islander. Our lives are very different. So yes, everyone, being priced out of paradise is not incorrect, but there are some clear reasons that have taken us away from our center of being Kanaka. And if we really want to live here in our homeland, that's one of the easier ways, one of the lower hanging fruit ways that we need to try to lean on in order to survive here at home.
Mahalo no for joining us for this episode of Free Hawaii News. It's been our pleasure to have you here with us, and we want to thank all of our guests for their mana'o.
Ano leila mahalo anu ia oko. No ko oko ki paana mai ka ho'onenia ana mai no ke opolo kalamu. Ahi ki ko mako manawa hou aku. Ahui hou kako. Aloha.
We hope you enjoyed this month's episode of Free Hawaii News. Mahalo for watching. There's a new show every month, so this program will air several more times this month. You can view it anytime on Olelo's on-demand site or on YouTube. See you next time. Ahui ho, aloha aina.
The Free Hawaii Broadcasting Network.